Good morning, Vintage. I hope there's lots of snow outside. We're glad you joined us this morning. Hope you're bundled up and staying warm on your couch drinking coffee. Tell me this, how many of you guys wanted it to snow today? Put it in the comments. I, for one, was a snow person. So these are how you're voting. You're either for it or you were against it. So if you voted against it, I want to know, did your kids vote against it? Anyway, also, if you do anything fun with your neighbors when it snows, we always have a big potluck. We grab whatever is left in our kitchens and we get together and do potluck snow day stuff. So anyway, I hope we're all doing something fun today with one another and our neighbors. We're glad you're here this morning. We're glad you're joining us online. If you have not joined us before, there's a way you can sign up to get all of our communications. You just go to vintage242.com. On the front page, there will be links to join the database or also to get the newsletter. We love when people join the newsletter because that's when you find out all the adjustments to the schedule, things coming up, and you just overall are put in the loop on that. So we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter also, and you can find updates that way. If you're looking to give online this morning, it's very easy to do. You can go to vintage242.com/give, or on your app, you can text any dollar amount to 84321, and then it will be connected specifically to your account at Vintage. So thank you guys for your faithfulness. We have just a couple of announcements this morning. We don't want you to go without knowing these things. Number one, we are kicking off prayer again this month. Here's what we've got going on. Tuesday mornings, we have prayer in the Vintage offices, actually in the community room, every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. No RSVP, just show up, pray with us on Tuesday mornings at 8. This week, we actually have a night of prayer and worship. Aaron Clark is gonna be leading that time musically for us, and that is gonna be Tuesday night at 7 p.m. in the sanctuary, so join us for that. And then we have a night of healing prayer later this month on January 27th, for us to pray for you, for your neighbors, for your friends, anybody that would love a touch from Jesus, a spiritual, emotional, physical healing, that would be great. We also have a men's breakfast gathering. It's next Saturday on the 22nd, so actually this coming Saturday. It's 8:30 to 11:30 in the community room, so come for that. There's no cost. We'd love to just serve you breakfast and hang out together. But we do need you to RSVP to make sure you have plenty of food. So go to vintage242.com/events and sign up for this. One of Steve's best friends, Tyler Reagan's coming to share, and we're super excited about having him. And then also, we have small groups up online ready for you to sign up when you get a chance. We have some that are going on consistently, but there are some new ones that we continue to add. One of those is a women's Bible study. It's going to be starting, let's see, January 26th, right around the corner. And then we have a men's group starting on sexual integrity as well, mid-February. So there's lots of groups that keep popping up. If you have questions, if you want someone to help you figure out what group might be a fit for you, April would love to do that. So you can find her at April at vintage242.com if you have any questions. Again, if you go to the website, you can find links to all these groups, the ones that have openings, and you can find out more about each one. So thanks, you guys. Have an awesome day. We love you, and we'll see you this week.
All right, Vintage. So I'm recording on Friday afternoon. So who knows what's actually going on weather-wise. And I hope all of you guys, though, are safe. And man, crazy times. Yeah, Randall and I and Sarah are doing well. You may have heard we have COVID or have had COVID, still have COVID. And so thankfully we've been getting better every day. But yeah, thanks for praying for us, all the messages we've gotten. Super thankful. Randall wants us to do a quick cameo real quick for Pugin. Yes, when we were doing virtual in 2020 with COVID, or 2020, yeah, Pugin was part of all of our Sunday morning gatherings here. And there you go. Not quite as personal, but it's a pillow. Yes. In fact, if you want to get a pillow for Christmas or for a loved one of your beloved pet, Randall can find the resource for you. Looks just like that. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, fantastic. Randall's sense of humor is amazing right now, right, guys? No, seriously, hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are safe. If it is snowing outside, nice and on the roads, please be careful. And yeah, we love you guys. Hey, so we are following up from last week. This is our last week and looking at Ecclesiastes. And this morning, I'm going to be diving into it. And I ended last week by telling a story that I've heard multiple times. You probably have too, of talking to those who are mentors, who are pastors, who are those we look up to as they're nearing the end of their life, and just kind of thinking through, hey, what's the one life message that you would share with me? And it was simple. Multiple times I've heard people say, Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones to him belong, they are weak, but he is strong. Yes, Jesus loves me, right? We all know that song. It's super familiar to, we grew up with it, a lot of us did. And that really is such a true statement, honestly, just around, one, the gospel message. For God so loved the world, he gave his only son, that who would believe in him would not perish, have everlasting life. And that's this gospel message, right? Jesus loves us. The Bible does tell us so, and that really is the central core of who we are, really honestly, is this wisdom. And I love this simple wisdom because it's so true. And honestly, again, the heart of the gospel, this type of wisdom, as we engage it, it gives meaning, it gives purpose to our lives, right? I am weak, he is strong, I know this because Jesus loves me, because he told me so. And as I said last week, these messages of wisdom are powerful. Last week, we realized that time teaches us in Ecclesiastes about things that are important in life. This week, our teacher will be death, right? So time from last week in chapter 1 of Ecclesiastes, and this week, looking at the wisdom teacher of death and what it teaches us, specifically looking at the last chapter 12 of Ecclesiastes. Before we dive into all of this, I want to just rebuild our foundation from last week very quickly. I encourage you to listen to the message from last week. Our focus last week and this morning again is on the book of Ecclesiastes from the Old Testament. It's known as wisdom literature. We see wisdom literature in Ecclesiastes. We also see it in Proverbs. We see it in Job and the Song of Solomon. As we said last week, that wisdom means... as wisdom teaching, it speaks about what is true for the purpose of empowering a person to live their best life. That's the nature of wisdom. It comes along, it teaches us, and we are then to respond by listening, learning, and then hopefully course correcting from what wisdom has just taught us. Again, from last week, the overarching message of Ecclesiastes, taken from chapter 1, verse 2, and then again talked about at the end of chapter 12, and then it's honestly scattered all the way through the wisdom literature of Ecclesiastes. It says this: meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. The Hebrew word here interpreted as meaningless is the word hevel. It literally means vapor or smoke, and it's meant to make the point that everything in life we give ourselves to, that we focus on, that we worry about, is temporary. It's temporary and it's fleeting. Whether they're good things in our lives that we give ourselves to, whether they're bad things or indifferent things that we give ourselves to, all of these things are hevel. They're temporary. They're like a smoke that's there, and all of a sudden it's just blown away, right? We talked last week, the idea of your best vacations you ever took, hevel. It was temporary. It was fleeting. The worst thing that's ever happened in your life, as painful as it was temporary. It was hevel. It was fleeting. And so in the context of our life, we recognize then that all that we give ourselves to, whether in pleasure, whether in work, whether with our anxiety, whether the things we give ourselves to in our free time, all of these things are hevel. They're just temporary. They're just fleeting. Therefore, none of these things ultimately, time teaches us, require and deserve the best of our energy and the best of our time, because all of these things are temporary versus eternal in nature. So we grab hold of this wisdom again, that it awakens, hopefully, an eternal perspective that hopefully causes the things of our life to be not quite as important, not quite as big. They cause us then, even our own level of self-importance, it causes us to get humble and to get smaller and for the things of God and the things of eternity to get bigger. Hopefully it creates a healthier perspective for us on how we view everything that we give ourselves to in life. In the teaching of Hevel, the author is hoping to point out all the ways that we find meaning, even our purpose in life apart from God, whether they're good things or bad things, and to deconstruct them to show how incomplete they are. They don't last, and they don't eternally satisfy us. The two greatest eternity definers we talked about last week were the teachers of time, again, which we looked at from chapter 1, verses 3 through 11, and then the eternal teacher of death, which we're going to look at this morning from the mid part of chapter 11 through chapter 12, verse 7. Again, this morning, focusing on death as our wisdom teacher. Now, a phrase used in the Bible Project I talked about last week from Right Now Media, I encourage you all to go look at that. They actually break down almost all of the books of the Bible, maybe all of them. I haven't looked at it, but a phrase used in the Bible Project in Ecclesiastes that I think sums up the idea of death is that it is the great equalizer. Think about death. It affects the rich, it affects the poor, it affects the wise, it affects the foolish in a very equal way. The idea of death is that, man, everyone and everything's just going to die. And it is the inevitability and the finality of death that should help us build perspective in life. If we're going to die, then we should make the most of the years that we have. Death, again, is the great equalizer. It puts everything that we give ourselves to in life, that we get worried about, anxious about, it puts everything into perspective. I remember years ago listening to a guy speak who really was carrying the gift of an evangelist. His heart burned for the lost, those who didn't know Jesus. His heart burned for those who, quote unquote, going to live separated from God for eternity. And his heart, it truly broke for them. He had written a book aptly named The One Thing You Can't Do in Heaven, talking about the fact that you just can't share the gospel with your lost neighbor when life is over. The book then gave practical ideas and steps on, hey, how do you share the gospel with people who meet in life who don't know Jesus? At the time, I was he was sharing at a ministry that I was on staff with, and as he spoke and as we went out to dinner together and talked about just his heart and his passion for the lost, as he talked about his friendship with Charles Barkley and sharing the gospel with Charles Barkley, who then introduced him to Michael Jordan, right? I'm just kind of wowed by a guy who had met guys like him, right? But I also was undone by his passion to share the gospel with them, not him being caught up in the trappings of actually knowing these guys. He cared more about their heart and more about their eternal destination than anything about them in basketball, popularity, and wealth. Those things didn't matter. All that mattered to him was the eternal destiny of their life. And as we sat there, I remember listening to him and his passion for the lost, and I just began thinking to myself, wow, he sees people and their eternal destiny in a way that I don't. He sees them in light of eternity in a way that I don't. And if honest, I was incredibly challenged by it in the moment. So connecting it to our wisdom writer in Ecclesiastes, I realized using language that my evangelist, quote unquote, buddy understood the hevel of life in light of people's eternal destiny. He recognized all the things of life that we get trapped by just didn't matter. What mattered was their eternal destiny, eternity for them. He saw life through the lens of eternity in a way that I didn't. He saw the inevitability of death, and it caused him to live life differently on behalf of those who were separated from Jesus. He was concerned about the lost. Not about things in life, not about his own vacations, not about making money, not about his own personal safety, not getting his way in life. He wasn't worried about having control over everything in his life. He didn't worry about all the things at jobs, the things that worry and cause anxiety. No, those things were hevel compared to the eternal destiny of those who didn't know Jesus for him. The inevitability and finality of death had taught him about what was important in life: eternity, eternal destination, things that are eternal in nature. And that is the heart and wisdom of the verses that we're looking at this morning, that we learn from in the wisdom of death. Let's break a few verses down just from chapter 11 and chapter 12. A couple of verses from chapter 11 and 12 this morning. Again, not all of them. I encourage you to read them yourself later, and you can do it today. You've got time, right? But verses 8 and 9 of chapter 11, this is verses 1 and 2 of chapter 12. Here we go. However many years anyone may live, let them enjoy them all. But let them remember, quote unquote, the days of darkness, for there will be many. Everything to come is meaningless. So again, just in here saying the days of darkness, he's literally talking about the moment of death, right? Our days of darkness and death far outnumber our days of life, right? We're dead longer than we are alive. So he's telling them, remember the days of darkness, for there will be many. Everything to come is meaningless. And the idea, kind of just attaching this to just the theology of the day, there, you can't take a U-Haul to heaven with you. That's kind of the mentality here, right? Everything to come, everything you've given yourself to, that's been so important, ultimately in death, you can't take it with you. All of it is meaningless. Verse 9, you were young. Be happy while you were young. Let your heart give you joy in the days of your youth. Follow the ways of your heart and whatever your eyes see, but know that for all these things, God will bring you into judgment. Verse 1 of chapter 12, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars grow dark and the clouds return after the rain. Here in these verses from chapter 11, the teacher again, he's remembering his youth while speaking to the inevitability of old age and death, right? It just can't be cheated. It's coming for everyone, and you draw closer to it every day of your life. It is inescapable. His wisdom is simple yet profound. He begins with this wisdom in verse 8 by telling them to enjoy their youth, to enjoy the life they have been given. Don't miss the wisdom. Our life truly is a gift, and it's to be lived, and it's to be enjoyed. There's a beautiful wisdom in that, right? We don't just say, oh, I'm going to die, so I'm just going to wait for heaven. No, we are to live our lives. We're to give ourselves, as Jeremiah 29 talks about, give yourself in marriage, right? Give yourself to the prosperity of the city in which you live. Seek the prosperity of those that you're around. Give yourself in relationship. He's like, live your life and enjoy your life. There's wisdom in that. However, in verse 9, it also attaches to this wisdom. Always live life in light of how temporary that life actually is, for the days of darkness are coming, representing the coming of old age and ultimately the coming of death. He says in verse 8, yes, enjoy life, but enjoy life in context of the reality that old age and death is inevitable. Live life with that in mind. There is an end. In chapter 12, verse 1, the writer then gives a unique type of wisdom about our youth in light of impending death. He says, remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Do you see that in verse 1? Remember your Creator in the days of your youth. With the previous verse in mind where he tells his listeners their youth is a time for enjoyment and richness of life. It's interesting because he uses this verse to tell them it's also the best time to connect with and build a relationship with God. He is telling them it is most wise to use the greatest energy you will ever have, which is in the days of your youth, to remember and invest into your relationship with the Creator. Use the energy and the zeal of your youth to grow into the greatest and most important relationship you will ever have, your eternal relationship with God. Do you see that? Remember your Creator in the days of your youth. See, yes, enjoy your life. Death is coming. Therefore, take this time in youth when you have your greatest energy, when you have your greatest zeal, and invest now into what is most important eternally. A question you can ask yourself, I could ask all the time. When you get to heaven, do you think you will regret spending your best energies investing into the primary relationship that you'll have for eternity? At whatever age, starting at 9, 8, 6 years old, do you think we would ever get to heaven and regret spending our best energies and our best time investing into the primary relationship that you'll have for eternity? The obvious answer is no. Like I look at right now in my life and I go, my primary relationships are with my girls and with my wife, with Sarah, AK, and Randall. When I get to be 70 years old, will I ever look back and regret making them my priority, preferring them over my hobbies, preferring them over my other friends? No, I will always say my greatest energies on earth was given to my priority relationships with my girls and with my wife. And that's what he's getting at here. Give the best of your energies when you have the most energy to the relationship that matters most. I'm belaboring that point because I want you to see the wisdom in it. Wisdom teaches us that in old age, again, we lose our vitality of life, and it needs to act as a perspective on what is important now and how we live our lives today. This is not rocket science, right? I'm reading the verses that follow, verses 3 through 8. It's actually interesting. To be honest, I kind of laugh as I read through them because the writer creates word pictures to describe old age. Word pictures to create old age. You can read them yourself. I'm just going to name a few here. He says, a time when everything is dark, right? Strong men grow weak and they start to stoop. Grinders, these are women who would grind wheat, they stop because they aren't strong enough to do it anymore. In fact, some theologians talk about grinders actually being, as you get older, you grind your teeth more. And he's talking about that. I have no idea. I just thought it was kind of funny, right? Talks about how people grow afraid of heights in these verses because they grow unsteady. On and on he goes, painting the picture. And the picture is really clear. It just stinks getting old. Have you ever talked to anybody who says, oh my gosh, I prefer the energy and the vitality of my 80s far more than I do when I was in my 20s? Never said by anybody, right? And that's the wisdom. It's just common sense. That's what death teaches us. That's the wisdom of it. It's inevitable. And up to death, there's this life that we live, right? We begin to lose energy, beginning to lose vitality. So let wisdom begin to teach us. In these verses, the wisdom teacher, again, is using the inevitability of death and all that comes with it that he describes to create perspective, to proclaim the wisdom. Yes, one, enjoy the life that you have in your youth. Do that. But the wisdom part two is then in this, use the best and most vital years of your life to build a relationship with the Creator. Death as a teacher of wisdom makes me think of the old phrase, why put off until tomorrow what you can do today, right? Another way of saying it in light of this wisdom teacher is why put off until tomorrow the life that you can live with Creator God today. The inevitability of old age and death is our constant reminder. It is our teacher. It is our wisdom to remind us earthly life is hevel. It's temporary. You can't take a U-Haul with you of your money, of your time. You can't take a U-Haul with all the energy you invested in worry and fear and anxiety. So why give your best energies to those things? Death teaches us that those disappear like a vapor and a smoke. Give yourself to the things that are eternal, the things that are of most importance today. Invest into those things, into what is eternal. Primarily, relationship with God, your relationships, into those people today who are in need of Jesus. That's what my evangelist buddy, he got it. He got it. He said, I see all of these things, but what's most important in the light of death is eternal destiny, eternal destination, and what's going on eternally with people. My prayer for you, my prayer for me is that, honestly, we engage the wisdom that death teaches us, and then we start giving ourselves to what is best, what is lasting, and what is eternal in life. As we end our time in Ecclesiastes, which has been very short, the idea for us is using time and using death as our teachers of wisdom about what we give ourselves to. I would encourage you as we end our time here, and you turn the video off here in a second, take some time this morning, take some time today to begin to be honest with yourself about what is getting the best of my energies. Whether they're good things, indifferent things, maybe bad things. What's getting the best of your emotional energies? Is it anxiety? Is it control issues? Is it worry? Is it doubt, or is it fear? Right? All of those things are hevel, they're temporary. We have to begin to put them into perspective to the grace of God, to the fruit of God's Spirit. The fruit of God's Spirit is eternal. We give ourselves to love and to joy and to peace and to patience, to kindness, goodness, gentleness. Listen, even the gifts of God's Spirit, they're not eternal. We won't be praying for healing anymore in heaven, but they're of heaven today. So we give ourselves to the things of God today, the gifts of His Spirit. We give ourselves to sharing the love of Jesus with those who are in need of it every day, like my buddy, the evangelist. What deserves the best of your energies today? Is it just your relationship and time with Jesus? Does He get the best of your energy? Does Netflix get the best of your energy? Does social media get the best of your energy? Take the time when your greatest energy and your greatest vitality today, and be honest with yourself. And let's shift what we give ourselves to. Let wisdom lead us. All right. I love you guys. I hope that makes sense. I hope you guys can engage this message. I hope you guys are staying safe. And I just want you to know I love you. And I'm looking forward to being back in person with you next week. But I love you guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I'm looking forward to seeing you soon.